Have you ever felt like there was a glitch in reality? Tonight, I'll be sharing 5 true glitch in the Matrix stories. Number 1. This glitch happened to me during the summer holidays when I was a teenager in high school. I was hanging out with my best friend nearly every day, and we'd often wander the countryside or go out on long bicycle rides since there wasn't much else to do. One night that summer, I had an awful nightmare about us riding our bikes. In the dream, we were riding a bit too fast down the middle of the road, so when a van pulled round a corner, I couldn't stop in time and got knocked off, the impact sending me hurling towards the ground. I hit my head hard on the road and died, at which point I woke up. The next morning, my best friend called to see if I wanted to go out for a long ride. The nightmare had creeped me out, so I agreed to the ride but made my friend meet me at the shop first so I could buy a cycling helmet. He scoffed when I told him why I was buying the helmet, laughing that it was just a dream. I knew he was probably right, but bought the helmet anyway, refusing to take it off all day. I'd almost forgotten about my nightmare by the time we were biking home for dinner. We were riding fast, hungry, and eager for food, standing on our pedals and zooming down the middle of the quiet roads, my friend slightly ahead of me. As we approached a blind corner in the neighborhood close to my house, I started to get a horrid feeling. Before I could shout out to my friend to slow down a bit, a white van came speeding around the corner in the middle of the road, and I swear everything started happening in slow motion. My friend wobbled and tried to jerk his bike over to the side of the road to avoid hitting the van, but tilted over too much. His bike slid out from under him as the van driver hit his brakes. There was a thud, and everything was moving too fast again. My friend was sprawled in the road, and the shocked van driver was getting out of the vehicle to rush over. I jumped off my bike in a daze and tottered over to him, the details of my dream coming back to me. Luckily, my friend had no major injuries. The van hit the bike he'd fallen off of, and not him directly. He was getting up on his own and brushing himself down as the van driver and I joined him. My friend shot a frightened look at me, and I could tell he was also thinking about my prophetic nightmare. The van driver was frantically asking him if he was okay, but all I could say was, "It should have been me." I said it over and over. Satisfied that no one was hurt, the van driver retrieved my friend's bike from under the front of his vehicle and gave me a weird look before he drove off. My friend and I pushed our bikes slowly back to my house for dinner, and I took off my cycle helmet and put it carefully in my parents' garage. We didn't go out riding again for the rest of the summer. I hadn't thought about this incident for a while until I recently discovered this subreddit and read some similar stories by others. Could my dream have been a glitch, or a glimpse into a future where I died, which I then changed by purchasing the bike helmet? My friend and I live in different cities now, but still occasionally speak. I might contact him to see if he remembers the time that it should have been me that was killed in a cycling accident. Number 2. Let me begin by saying that I made this account purely for this post. I'm not entirely sure if it belongs in this sub, so if not, feel free to remove it. I've read similar stories here, but nothing to the extent to which this affected me. I haven't been diagnosed with any mental issues, sleep-related issues, or anything that may explain any neurological-related causes, and have spoken to a psychologist in the past who gave me little explanation as to what may have caused it. But anyway, here it goes. As a child and throughout my teens, I was plagued with irregular and punishing episodes which occurred when I was about to sleep. To describe it is a very hard task, as these episodes were hard to verbally describe, which is why I found it so difficult to tell anyone, fearing that I would be diagnosed with a serious mental issue. The catalyst to cause such an episode was seemingly random and inconsistent, but it would commonly occur when reading books. I could have them on perfectly normal days, and again on a stressful day, but it always began the same. Everything would warp and appear like it was expanding rapidly away from me. I'd begin to feel very lightheaded and dizzy, and I also had the sensation that my head was slightly displaced to the right. Now, this is when it becomes hard to explain. After everything had become distorted and warped, I would see random words, shapes, numbers. I can't remember exactly what they were, but it was something I could distinguish at the time, but not recall immediately after. I can't find the words to describe the sensation at all, but it was very surreal, but also very real. I told my parents of these sensations, but they put it down to childish imagination. But my father told me that I would often describe it as maths. Alongside this would be a series of verbal cues which were pretty consistent throughout all the episodes. There was a specific one which would involve my parents or someone else shouting abuse at me, saying stuff like, "Stop, you idiot." Another was someone constantly telling me to hurry up. Another would question me about random, unanswerable things. As this was happening, I would experience the feeling that I needed to run and reach something that was always too far in the distance for me to reach, or through a small gap that I couldn't fit through. If you've made it this far and declared it as a load of shit, I understand, and I would expect you to. I just thought that maybe this was a place where I could get some potential answer, but to continue. Whilst this was happening, I was conscious, but I didn't and couldn't fully stop it from happening. It was like I enjoyed the sensation, but also dreaded it and was deeply scared of it. It just seemed so real, yet I knew it was fake. I thought about it maybe being an early stage of lucid dreaming, but I've experienced that on several occasions and can clearly say that this was much more real and that I was 100% awake. Sleep paralysis could also be a potential explanation. So, there it is. My glitch? Again, if this isn't deemed glitchy enough, feel free to remove it. I'd love some closure or some answers. Number 3. All my life, my mom and I have been, somehow, mentally connected. Strange little things like she would go grocery shopping and I'd sit at home thinking of how I wished for cinnamon buns and she would come home with them. Not just one isolated incident, but tons of them. My family referred to it as braining or brained. For example, Mom went to the store and OP wanted Twizzlers, and Mom brought some, so OP must have brained her. Another time, when I was about 6 or 7, as a surprise, my dad was shaving off his beard that he'd had for a long time because my mother wanted him to. But it was kept a secret and he left it to the last minute. My mom arrived home while he was still finishing it up, and I was sitting on the counter of the bathroom. He told me, "Go distract your mom for 5 minutes while I finish." So I hopped down and went to greet her. She pulled me onto her lap to say hi, and the second she touched me, she jerked her hand back like I'd shocked her. Then she looked deeply into my eyes for a second and said, "Your dad shaved his beard. I'll have to pretend to be surprised." And I was devastated, thinking somehow I'd betrayed my dad by letting her know. Not my fault we could read each other's minds. The main post here is about one particularly chilling incident that my dad has said he'll never forget. I was about 8 years old, my sister age 10. Sister and Mom went to do some errands in my mother's truck, and I was sitting outside the garage door playing in the dirt while my dad did some repairs on something or another. After a while, my dad looked up at me and said kind of to himself, Well, it's been some time since Mom and Sister left, and I wonder what's taking them so long. I didn't even look up from playing, just said casually, "It's okay, Dad. They're in the hospital. Mom will call soon, and don't worry, they're mostly okay." My dad stood there staring at me for about 30 seconds, and then the phone rang upstairs in the house. Hospital. The truck was T-boned, and Mom broke her wrist. My dad's jaw dropped. He looked at me as if I were an alien. I guess it was a strange experience for him. He packed me and my brother into his car, and we went to fetch Mom and my sister. I distinctly remember how I knew this information. There was a flash in my head, like a picture had been deposited there. It was of the hospital interior, and I just had this picture flash in my mind, and suddenly I knew all this info. Almost like it had been downloaded. It was really odd. Glitch in the Matrix, who knows? Maybe I'm psychic. I've had many other odd experiences that one could consider psychic or similar. If there's any interest, I'm happy to share. Number 4. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. A little background first. Reading all these strange accounts of people finding themselves in parallel dimensions had me remembering my childhood a lot lately, and how my mother and sister always told me I have memories, which I know happened. I can recall sights, smells, sounds, and even thoughts I had pertaining to these events at the time that never really happened, according to them. This memory doesn't involve anybody but me and my dog, however, and isn't as dramatic as other dimension glitch stories I've read, but here goes. I used to spend hours every day after school in the woods around my house, as there were miles of woods in all directions except for the north. I was walking to the north, which, if you walked far enough, about half a mile, you'd reach the main highway which my driveway came off of. We had made this little journey hundreds of times before at least, and I knew exactly where I was and where I was going. I have an excellent sense of direction from years of hiking forest with no trails, and I should have been around 30 to 40 yards away from the main road, but I hadn't heard traffic in a while, and the forest kept going on until I got very uncomfortable and didn't recognize where I was, which was impossible. The woods were still and silent, almost deafeningly silent, except for our footfalls. My dog remained unusually close to me at this point in the hike, and he kept looking up at me, but I was curious and young and wanted to know where the hell I was going, so we pressed on. We came to a large oval field with beautiful green grass, which was very well taken care of. In the middle of the field was a single apple tree. At the far end of the field was a big white house with red shutters and a red door facing us, probably a quarter mile away. As soon as we reached the field, my dog took off running and barking at the tree. I tried quietly shouting at him to come back, but he was on a mission. That's when I got a horrible, heavy feeling in my stomach, and my ears began to feel as if they were burning. I had to go, and it was urgent. I called my dog a few more times, then I just said fuck it, and ran a straight line back to the recognizable woods. The strange things happen here. When I got far enough back to the point where I recognized the landscape, I began to hear traffic behind me in the direction I came. I still kept running until I reached my front yard. I swear this is the absolute truth, and I've never understood how it happened, but when I opened the front door, my dog was waiting inside for me, and I never saw him pass me by on the run back. I remained inside the rest of the day and played video games. I made several attempts to find this place over the next few years, but never could. I've gone in every direction around my house for miles, even used Google Maps trying to locate the field, but I can't find anything but forest for miles and the main road to the north. Number 5. This is my first time writing this to anyone. Almost 20 years ago, I went to high school in a fairly large city. Major sports teams and never-ending population. One night when I was 16, I was driving home around 5 p.m. There's a very busy intersection that is the artery to the freeway. That afternoon, I had an older kid at my high school make fun of me in front of my only friends. This wasn't new. By the school's definition, I was far from cool and I couldn't really stand up for myself. My mind was reliving that moment over and over again. What could I have done better? And I suddenly realized that I was driving through the red light into this insanely busy intersection. It wasn't even the light just turned red type of light run. It was red, and other rush hour cars were speeding through. In that moment, I assumed I was about to die. There were 10 cars traveling into my driver's side at 30 miles per hour, while I traveled at 45 plus. There was a brief second of everything slowing down and seeing another driver about 2 yards away from me. As I pressed the brakes, the next thing I knew, I was about a fourth of a mile away. My car was fine. No one was honking at me. Somehow, I perfectly stopped at a less busy streetlight, 2 blocks east and 1 block south of where I had been. This meant I would actually have to pass the same intersection again to get home. I rolled into a grocery store parking lot and let the adrenaline subside. The explanation I gave myself was that I hit the accelerator instead of the brakes, and my brain went into autopilot, sending me to that location. This is where things get even weirder. After accepting that my emotions and logic were on low, I decided to take the long way home. No freeway, no busy roads, no suburban substreets that I hadn't heard of pre-Google Maps. This was a horrible idea, as I was lost for a good 3 to 4 hours trying to get to my house. In the distance, I saw a car on a road. It was an accident with a motorcycle. A high school girl backed out of her driveway too fast and sent a biker 30 yards into a subdivision entrance brick wall. The way his body was positioned, my first thought was that it was a stolen scarecrow instead of a living, breathing human being. Immediately, I went to work giving CPR to the bike rider, who didn't have a pulse. He also had a skull fracture and neck fracture that I knew I shouldn't move him. As neighbors began to flock out, they argued with me mid-CPR to move the body. The victim survived, and I even got to meet him about a year after the incident. What's weird about this glitch isn't that I'm not sure how I survived running that red light, or that I even found myself at an accident site that would have left the biker dead. I'm constantly finding myself as the first responder to deadly car accidents. What ties these accidents with my first encounter is that they always happen when I'm not on my regular day-to-day drive. They're when I take odd routes and long drives to clear my head.